After Natania Reuben testified in the Diddy case an hour ago, the court issued arrest warrants for J-Lo. Before we start, viewers are warned to exercise caution as we present the following account derived from Sworn. The horrific decline of Sean Diddy Combs and Jennifer Lopez, formerly the king and queen of hip-hop glitz, is reconstructed through testimonies, secret court records, and first-hand witness reports. In 1999, a gun was shot inside a nightclub in Manhattan, striking 3 people, including Natania Reuben, in one of the most dramatic and sinister criminal incidents in the entertainment industry. Would live with that physical and psychological scar for the rest of her life. At the time, everyone's attention was focused on one rapper, Jamal Shine Barrow, who was quickly taken into custody, tried, and given a sentence for 10 years in prison. But more than 20 years later, a very different story is being told in a federal courtroom. And it has the potential to completely alter our understanding of the situation. Not only does Diddy not shine now, but Jennifer Lopez, who was once referred to as Jenny from the block, is also being mentioned in court documents, old testimonies, and viral claims as more than just a bystander to that fatal night. It begins with Cassie Ventura. Her lawsuit against Sean Diddy Combs in late 2023 tore apart a sealed vault of abuse. Her allegations of manipulation and control extended beyond personal suffering to include system operations and a secret society masquerading as celebrity before a name no one could remember. Natania Reuben's voice had largely faded from public awareness, but she returned to court with conviction, testifying that the truth about the 1999 shooting had been purposefully concealed. She implicated Jennifer Lopez in addition to Diddy, and as a result, Reuben and other new witnesses claim that the case's entire story changed. Reuben claimed in court that Lopez snuck the gun into the club, proving that she was more than just Diddy's girlfriend on that fateful night. Following the gunfire, she and Diddy planned a cover-up, accusing Shine, the youngest and most disposable person in the room, of being responsible. Shine was sent to prison, and Diddy and Lopez walked free, and their careers took off in the years that followed, but now it all looks like it could end. According to court filings, Lopez not only assisted in hiding evidence, but may secretly wed Diddy at that time in order to avoid testifying against him, which was a legal loophole and a calculated move motivated more by survival than love. If that wasn't enough, when Cassie told the court that Diddy had once given her a loaded gun outside of a club and commanded her to carry it, it brought fresh terror to the public's attention. Despite her internal fear, she sobbed and complied, making headlines at the time. However, the inference was chilling. This wasn't the first time he had used women as gun mules, and now according to new testimony and witness confirmation, Lopez's role in the 1999 shooting appears to have been a planned act of complicity, rather than a teenage error. The phrase "ride or die" was used. On a much darker note, Rodney Lyle Rod Jones, another complainant, asserted that J-Lo's actions were not merely incidental. Rather, he said that she was instrumental in protecting Diddy from repercussions. Whether it was influencing witnesses, hiding evidence, or deceiving the media, it was evident from the picture that Jennifer Lopez wasn't merely supporting her partner. Rather, she was assisting in the symbolic concealment of the bodies. The 1999 shooting is being reopened as part of the larger federal investigation, according to law enforcement sources, and court rumors are now turning into federal roars. Judge has apparently approved arrest warrants that are confidentially sealed, but Diddy's Empire probe includes J-Lo's name in those papers. The audience is truly shocked, but for those who have been paying close attention to the Diddy trial, the pattern is familiar. It's the same tale Cassie presented. She detailed how Diddy paid for everything in her life, including her house, car, and phone, and used those items as leverage. When she let him down, he took them back. This was a control coercion cover-up. She was just 21 when she first protested, and he punished her by exposing her to freak-offs, drug-using, stranger-watching, and surveillance-related sexual encounters. She initially said she wanted to win his approval later. Diddy planned everything from outfits to lighting to camera angles. It wasn't chaos, it was, Cassie stated, describing how she eventually cracked after using drugs to get through it. Choreography. And J-Lo, who first dated Diddy, reportedly witnessed everything, according to Cassie and other witnesses. J-Lo was not only aware of the freak-offs she allegedly attended them, she was reportedly observed at one such party where a 13-year-old girl was persuaded into involvement. Another woman, Misha, said that she caught eyes with J-Lo. She alleged she did nothing but watch during a freak-off, silently pleading for help. Even J-Lo's ex-husband, Ojani Noah, fueled the flames by claiming she was actively involved in Diddy's personal life. Globe that she was aware of what was taking place behind those closed doors, that she wasn't merely involved, but that she felt at ease with the consequences, which go beyond criminal charges and are based on personal complaints, revealed that the FBI had presented Ben Affleck video footage purportedly showing Lopez at one of Diddy's freak-off parties. According to sources, the incident ruined their restarted marriage, and the time frame fits. The public body language of Lopez and Affleck changed, and their relationship is now ended. A strong guy sees something he can't ignore, and Jennifer Lopez finds herself as part one comes to a close. It's evident that the Diddy trial is about more than just one man's crimes. It's about a network, decades of silence, and who stood up. J-Lo's mugshot may not yet exist, but the testimony has already produced a decision in the court of public opinion by grinning while others were destroyed. And it's just the beginning. When word leaked out that J-Lo would be arrested, the internet went crazy, not only because of her personality, but also because of how long she had been out of the spotlight for years, always juggling scandals, immaculate and unaltered. But now everything felt different. Instead of merely examining her past, others were analyzing it. And all of a sudden, everyone recalled the 1999 mugshot, in contrast to Shine's mugshot, which was taken at the precinct while wearing street clothes and puffies against a concrete wall. J-Lo's was taken against a bulletin board while wearing vintage Reuben brought attention to the ridiculousness of your belief that they were out clubbing at Christmas, but it wasn't fashion, rather it was damage control from the beginning. Ben attempting to alter the images, the optics, and the story, and for the most part, they were successful. Up until now, the public had never questioned it, but suddenly, inside the courtroom, the story John Deal, the former chief of Bad Boy Security, testified that Diddy admitted to framing Shine. I detest that expletive. Diddy allegedly told him that. The situation changed once more. Was personally planned cold. As per the agreement, witnesses were handpicked, instructed, and coerced. Some were compensated, while others were intimidated. J-Lo's name was mentioned not as a bystander, but as a social media user started to draw the dots when a participant helped ensure that the correct people said the right things and the wrong person was imprisoned outside the courthouse. Tabloids' old video, timelines, conspiracies, and consensus. One tweet went viral, and everyone assumed she was the alibi, but it turns out she might have been the A's other women came out. The word became particularly memorable. Misha, for example, talked about how she was abused at a freak-off event while J-Lo watched in silence while another spoke anonymously. Asserted that J-Lo not only planned a guest list and attended several parties, but that the cherry on top was a purportedly leaked list from a private flight manifest in 2000 that included Diddy's name. The prosecution leaned into it and presented a forensic study of communication records between Jennifer Lopez and Cassie, a juvenile. And the dots weren't just connecting. They were creating a map. In 1999, J-Lo made several calls to a burner phone that was eventually connected to Diddy's assistant. Two of those conversations took place within half an hour of the club's surveillance video being shot. Showed her throwing something into a trash can while they were running. The bin was never found, but the video was still there. The defense objected to rumors, and the judge permitted the film, and the jury leaned forward while rumors of Lopez receiving an arrest warrant quickly spread among people close to federal investigators, suggesting that Lopez had refused several subpoenas, that she'd traveled abroad shortly after Cassie's case was public, that she was now in a country with no extradition treaty. Suddenly, the tale changed again. A retired FBI agent who appeared on TV news stated frankly, "She's acting like someone who's scared," demonstrating that this was about avoidance rather than guilt. Talk shows and TikTok feeds echoed the phrase, "And usually when people run, they're running from the truth." For the first time in years, Jennifer Lopez was no longer untouchable, but then came the purported marriage bombshell. Singer Jaguar Wright, who is renowned for revealing the secrets of celebrities, asserted that J-Lo and Diddy got married in Tio. Secret in 1999 was a tactic more frequently employed in organized crime circles than in Hollywood, and if it were true, Lopez would have been legally shielded from testifying against him. However, a marriage license was never located, and neither was a definitive denial. Lopez's team stayed quiet. Dorothy's camp made no remarks, and the public, who had previously been enamored with the couple, suddenly looked. The issue became More complex with Ojani Noah's rediscovered interview, in which he asserted that Lopez wasn't merely a bystander to Did's freak-offs. Rather, she was in the room, in the act, and he did not go so far as to label her a predator, but he made it apparent that she was aware of what had happened to Cassie, and that others had chosen to ignore it and profit from the silence. Not innocent. And Lopez remained silent once more. By the second week of the public outcry, the courtroom had turned into a theater with demonstrators outside holding signs that read, "Protect survivors, prosecute." The Cassie's emotional testimony struck a deep chord with J-Lo, who realized that she was young, afraid, and controlled. When asked if anyone else knew what was going on, she said, as Chapter 2 comes to an end, Jennifer Lopez's flawless image and trajectory are no longer sustainable, and she might not be behind it. She stopped before saying, "Everyone, even though she hasn't been charged yet, millions of people believe that she is already on trial, and the verdict is quickly coming in." By the time federal authorities verified that Jennifer Lopez was formally, the public had already concluded that JLO wasn't only in the wrong location at the wrong time. She was involved in the 1999 nightclub shooting inquiry, which was reopened. Inside the courtroom, the focus had changed from the glitz, the red carpets, and the award speeches to who protected whom, and the fairy tale was now breaking one headline at a time. Casey's cross-examination had been harsh, but she remained unflappable as she described not only abuse, but also patterns, cycles, and scripts that said, "You didn't just survive. You outlived the machine," the prosecution continued, shaking her voice, yet she nodded. And the jury wasn't merely, in the meantime, a private statement belonging to a former Diddy bodyguard, identified only as Witness C, was leaked. He stated that in 2001, following the dust storm, they were observing a survivor while also hearing a victim. Diddy threw a party for closure rather than celebration after the shooting trial, and Witness C claims that Lopez was present. She was told, "You performed your part brilliantly, it wasn't a toast, it was an absolution," the public said, and her music was no longer streamed by admirers. The film studios discreetly put her projects on hold. In contrast to the savage Cassie shivering on the stand and narrating how she was, sponsors left dark comment sections full of incredulity and rage about how someone so admired could be so involved. She was made to witness her own horror on camera while remaining mute in a villa abroad, one pleading to be heard, the other not in sight, and then the voice that said, "No one." Jamal Shine Barrow finally broke his silence after years of silence with a public statement from Beast, where he currently works as a member of, he didn't specifically mention Lopez, so he didn't have to wait for the next domino to fall quickly, a civil suit, but he wrote, "I took the fall so they could rise. I was betrayed." Parliament. Brought by Natania Reuben was reopened, and she changed the claim to name Lopez as a co-conspirator. Her lawyers referenced fresh testimony and Reuben's initial facial injuries from being shot. It was more than sufficient for a judge to approve an arrest order that was legally sealed but had already been leaked, implying that Lopez had a knowing and intentional part in transferring the weapon. Panic spread across in a brief statement. Lopez's team and camp said that although Lopez maintains her innocence and is willing to participate fully with any legal processes, the court didn't want collaboration presence and she was still missing. According to several sources, she was spotted in Dubai, the Maldives, and possibly even Albania, a country that does not have an extradition treaty with the voicemails, and old recordings of Did's own remarks were played aloud throughout the trial, while some in the US referred to it as a self-imposed exile, and others as a flight from justice. One message in particular from the confiscated hard disks stopped the room in its tracks. I told her, "If you carry it, we're safe." She replied, "Okay." There were no names or dates, but everyone in the courtroom knew who she was, and Lopez's name was inscribed on every page of the case, so it didn't need to be spoken. As the testimony went on, a psychologist spoke, explaining the mindset of facilitators and how people in toxic systems start out as spectators, but soon turn into her statement. "The longer you stay silent, the more you start to believe silence is safe," went viral online, became a headline, and, without ever mentioning her, defined the Lopez defense. "Guilty," a new voice surfaced. Misha. In her second public statement, which was much more upsetting than the first, she explained how she witnessed J-Lo laughing at a freak-off party during a moment of horrible abuse, but she didn't say it was malicious. Instead, she said it was normal. Misha said she didn't look shocked, and Lopez remained silent. But silence in a situation like this speaks for itself. Even her closest friends started to turn away from her, including former co-stars, fashion partners, and collaborators. Many removed her name from product lines, bios, and portfolios. The word willful ignorance was used repeatedly in the courtroom as the jury began to realize the true tale, which included not only assault and manipulation but also complicity in choosing comfort over bravery of allowing others to suffer for fame. By the end of Part 3, the prosecutor gave a terrifying speech for each freak-off party, and she glanced at the guest list. As the trial approached its fourth week, it was no longer a courtroom drama but a cultural event, with some of the attendees being international celebrities. The message was clear: no one was too great to fall. Recognizing that what started as an investigation into one man's wrongdoing had evolved into an autopsy of a generation's celebrity myth, with Jennifer at its core. Unspoken, unseen, but unavoidable every time Lopez's name was spoken, the courtroom held its breath as gasps echoed through the gallery and her image appeared on the evidence screens. This wasn't a cameo, it was complicity. With Diddy's criminal enterprise already exposed, the federal prosecutor's tone changed to one of surgical precision. They no longer needed to demonstrate intent. Instead, they were establishing regular patterns. A former event, planners spoke about booking freak-off weekends under a fictitious name, which always had special permission, and Lopez's shadow hung over every timetable. They stated, but we all knew who it was. They just called her the guest of glass, which is why nothing reflected back. Then the audio and encrypted file from a laptop that had been found appeared. Did's voice is evident that she's okay with it. He says, "She knows how this goes, a female." The defense battled hard to prevent its admission, but the court permitted a portion of the clip. Voice responds bright, recognizable. She said she's not coming unless the girl's over 18. Diddy laughs. That's just for optics. It was quick, but it was enough. The courtroom exploded. Media rushed to file. Legal analysts froze in mid-sentence, and hours later, the public heard it on podcasts, YouTube, TikTok, and other platforms. The voice purportedly belonging to Lopez wasn't shouting, resisting, but simply negotiating. And when the judge announced a break, Lopez became viral, but she said nothing. Meanwhile, a growing group of ladies, including Cassie, Misha, and Nada, started, according to a reporter, releasing combined comments that were unplanned, unprepared, and simply unfiltered stories together, was the undoing of the untouchables. For decades, women were instructed to keep quiet since naming names would terminate careers that no one would trust. Today, they were terminating careers with the truth. The defense attempted a final change of strategy by calling a cultural historian to testify, claiming that in 1999, many behaviors that are now considered unacceptable were accepted, and that celebrities like J-Lo were subject to intense pressure from the industry to cooperate. But the prosecution didn't bat an eye. They showed the jury the video of the 13-year-old's injuries, the texts, and the money transfers. Culture is not a shield, the prosecution said. The prosecution stated that it's not a cloak for cruelty. Following demand from several advocacy groups, the court authorized the release of transcripts of a 2002 internal bad boy conference, in which Lopez attended and whose notes were attached, were among the sealed documents. One phrase was highlighted, in red media misleading in. The jury didn't gasp. Instead, they nodded as though the last piece had fallen into place, and outside pressure increased. Advocates told them it was shine and that we would play silence. Petitions, films, and federal accusations. J-Lo's lawyer released a second statement saying, "Our client is being used as a scapegoat for a broken system," but no one took notice. Millions of people followed fast-tracked victims, and J-Lo Shay changed her name from Jenny from the Block to Jane Doe DeRue in the People's Case file before the shocking. When asked if Lopez ever knew about the incident, Diddy broke down on the witness stand, clearly exhausted and hollowed out. He verified parts of Cassie's story that were disputed and waffled on others. He didn't evade. She assisted in choosing the positions, he added, and the girls paused as he looked down. I didn't ask her to bring them, but she understood their purpose, and the courtroom remained the same. Although the trial was not yet over, the prosecution's silence was devastating since it conveyed the impression that no one was above consequence. Not a mogul, not a legend, not symbols decked in diamonds by when the closing argument started. Jennifer Lopez was more well known for her absence, and in one instance her silence, than for her concert tours or red carpet appearances. The prosecution's closing argument, which had grown the loudest of all, was straightforward. This trial isn't about what's legal. It's about what's right and what occurred at those clubs. Those freak-offs and those cover-ups were wrong. They recapped every name, every bruise, every hush payment, and Jennifer Lopez had the opportunity to refuse each time, but she chose not to. The defense did what it could, stressing that Lopez was not officially charged and portraying her as a lady caught in the clutches of a powerful and manipulative man. Judge Diddy and the jury weren't only evaluating acts. They were also evaluating decisions, and according to the reasoning of this court case, silence amounted to complicity. The nation waited for 3 days after the jury retired before the guilty verdict of racketeering, sex trafficking, obstruction of justice, and witness tampering was delivered. The courtroom exploded not in. Although Lopez wasn't on trial, she was on the record. The court of law had spoken, but the court of public opinion had been in disarray. But justice had finally found its course. After weeks of unified support, Lopez's public relations team issued a third statement in a matter of hours. Jennifer Lopez continues to refute all accusations and upholds her reputation for community service and professional excellence. Service. Streaming numbers were canceled, tour dates were postponed, talk shows were canceled, brand partnerships were hesitantly extended, and she had not been formally dissolved. Convicted, but she had been convicted by culture. And after the unimaginable journey from exile to vindication, a bipartisan congressional committee gave a formal U.S. apology, but not a complete. He declined to comment. But one of his assistants stated that he simply wants the truth to last longer than the deception ever did. Casey, Misha, and Nada started a joint venture. The initial news conference was filled with survivors rather than journalists, and the organization, Witness to Power, supports visibility and legal aid for victims of abuse by public individuals. Shared the truth because I wanted to be free, Cassie said, shaking over the microphone in the front row. I didn't expect the world to change, but maybe we can start by transforming the people we refer to as heroes. And what about Diddy's quick life sentence without the possibility of release for federal offenses with several state cases still pending? Jennifer Lopez returned to the United States under sealed agreements. She was never jailed or charged, but his legacy was preserved, his empire was liquidated, and his name was connelled, not by fad, but by consent. The following day, J.Lo cooperated with a federal investigation into Diddy's trial, and that was it. No tours, no video, no transcript. Just a headline. Comments, no applause, simply quiet. Because sometimes silence is how power conceals, and occasionally quiet is how it dies. This wasn't merely a famous person. Controversy, it served as a warning about fear of fame and the cost of turning a blind eye. The silence was broken by Cassie's words, and now, nobody can claim not to have heard.